In this world, everyone wears a mask, not just the ones we see on their faces, but invisible ones woven from their words, actions, and intentions. A warm smile can conceal resentment. Generosity can be a tool for manipulation. Politeness can serve as a disguise for deceit. People present themselves as kind, honest, and virtuous, but beneath the surface, their true nature remains hidden, sometimes even from themselves. The wealthy donor who gives to charity may be more concerned with praise than compassion. The friend who flatters you may do so out of self-interest, not sincerity. The humble man may simply be waiting for power to reveal his arrogance. So how can we truly see through these illusions? How do we separate those who act with genuine goodness from those who wear virtue as a costume? There is an old Zen saying, "A painted tiger does not bite, and a painted dragon does not breathe fire." Just as a masterful painting can make a tiger look real, a person can appear noble, wise, or kind without truly embodying those qualities. But a painted tiger will never move. Only time, observation, and experience can reveal what is real. A long time ago, a young monk wrestled with this very question. He had seen people who spoke of morality, yet acted in selfishness. Those who preached kindness, but harbored envy. Confused and troubled, he turned to his master, a revered Zen teacher, and asked, "Master, how can we truly know a person's heart?" The old master did not respond with words. Instead, he smiled gently and gestured for the young monk to follow him. "Come with me," the master said. And so, without knowing where they were going or what lesson awaited him, the young monk followed his master down the winding mountain path toward the village below. He did not yet know it, but this journey would forever change the way he saw the world. The journey of observation. The monastery stood high above the world, nestled in the silent embrace of the mountains, where mist wove through the trees like an eternal veil. It was a place of deep contemplation, where monks sought to see beyond illusions, to understand life not as it appeared, but as it truly was. Among them was a young disciple, his heart restless with questions. He had observed people long enough to know that their words often did not match their actions. He had seen men who spoke of humility, yet carried pride in their eyes, and women who offered kindness only when others were watching. He had seen generosity tainted by the need for praise and honesty twisted by hidden motives. Troubled by these contradictions, he came to his master one morning and asked, "Master, how can we truly know a person's heart?" The old master did not answer immediately. Instead, he studied the young monk with knowing eyes, as if he had once asked the very same question. Then, without explanation, he simply said, "Come with me." The young monk followed without hesitation. The village below the path wound down the mountainside, carrying them toward a bustling village at its base. The young monk expected a lecture along the way, perhaps a story of wisdom or a set of teachings to memorize. But the master remained silent, walking with the patience of one who knew that some lessons could not be spoken, they had to be seen. When they entered the village, the young monk was immediately struck by the contrast to the stillness of the monastery. Here, life moved swiftly. Merchants called out their wares, customers haggled, and laughter mingled with the sharp cries of street vendors. The air smelled of roasted chestnuts, incense, and the earthy scent of the nearby river. The master stopped at the marketplace, where the crowds thickened, and leaned in to whisper, "Watch, and you will find your answer." The young monk obeyed, his eyes darting from one scene to another, looking for something profound. He noticed a wealthy merchant, standing near the temple gates. He reached into his silk robe, pulled out a handful of coins, and dropped them into a beggar's bowl with a flourish. His voice rang out loudly, "May all beings be free from suffering." Heads turned. The beggar bowed, offering words of gratitude. The merchant smiled, basking in the admiration of those around him. The young monk frowned. Is this true generosity? He wondered. A few steps away, he saw a well-dressed woman standing before a street performer. She laughed at his tricks, applauding with delight. But when a small, ragged child approached her with pleading eyes, she clutched her purse tightly and turned away, her smile vanishing. But then, his gaze fell upon a young boy, no older than 10. He was thin, his clothes patched and worn. He had only a small piece of bread, but when he saw a starving stray dog, he knelt down and offered it without hesitation. The dog wagged its tail and ate eagerly, while the boy simply watched, content. The master, who had been observing alongside his student, nodded and moved on. The test of conflict later, as the sun began its descent, the master led the young monk to a small tea house on the edge of the village. The scent of jasmine and ginger filled the air as steam curled from delicate porcelain cups. The two monks sat in silence, watching the people around them. At a nearby table, two men engaged in a polite discussion. Their words were measured, their smiles practiced. They addressed each other as brother and friend. But then, something changed. One man made a comment that the other did not agree with. The air in the room shifted. Voices rose. Smiles faded. The man who had spoken with such gentle words just moments ago now bared his teeth in anger, his face twisted with arrogance. "You dare challenge me?" he hissed, his fist tightening against the table. The other man, though clearly insulted, simply took a deep breath. He met the glare with calm eyes, shook his head, and stood to leave. The young monk watched in silence, feeling as though he had just witnessed something important, but he could not yet put it into words. The reflection as night fell and the two monks began their journey back up the mountain. The young disciple could no longer contain his curiosity. "Master, why did we observe these people? What does it have to do with my question?" The master smiled, not unkindly, and said, "The truth of a person is not in what they say, but in what they do, especially when they believe no one is watching." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle before continuing. "Did you see the merchant, eager to be seen as generous? True generosity is silent, expecting nothing in return. His gift was not kindness, it was a performance. Did you notice the woman who smiled at the performer but recoiled from the child? Kindness that is selective is not true kindness. And the boy who gave his bread to the dog? He gave without hesitation, without expectation. That was real kindness, not because of what he had, but because of who he was." The young monk nodded, understanding in part, but he still had questions. The master continued, "And what of the two men at the tea house? Did you see how the polite one became cruel when challenged? Words can be rehearsed, but reactions are raw. A person's true nature is revealed not when things are easy, but when they are tested by power, by conflict, or by the absence of an audience." They reached the monastery gates. The moon had risen high, bathing the courtyard in silver light. The master turned to his student and said, "A painted tiger looks fierce, but it does not bite. A painted dragon looks powerful, but it does not breathe fire. If you wish to see the truth in others, do not listen to their words. Watch what they do when they believe no one is looking." The young monk bowed, his heart heavy with understanding. From that day forward, he no longer took people at their word. He watched, he listened, and most importantly, he let time reveal the truth. The three hidden tests of character. The young monk stood before his master, his mind buzzing with the observations from the village. His eyes were wide with a new understanding, but there was still more to learn. He had seen the truth in people's actions, but his master was about to deepen his knowledge even further. The old master spoke, his voice calm and steady, as if every word had the weight of years of wisdom behind it. "There are three tests to truly know a person's character," the master began, his eyes reflecting the moonlight that bathed the courtyard. "If you wish to understand someone, observe them under these three conditions: when they hold power, when they are in conflict, and when they interact with those who can offer them nothing in return." Power, the ultimate revealer of character. Give a person power, and you will see their soul. The master's voice held a quiet intensity as he spoke these words. The young monk leaned in, eager to understand the depth of this lesson. He had seen many people behave kindly when they were weak, humble when they had little, but what happened when they were given power? What did that reveal about their true nature? Power, the master explained, was the ultimate test. It wasn't so much the person's actions when they had nothing. It was what they did when they had everything. A person who is kind when they are poor may not be kind when they are rich. A humble servant might become arrogant when given authority. The essence of kindness is not how one treats their equals, but how they treat those beneath them, those who cannot help them or give them anything in return. The master continued, illustrating his point with a few simple examples. A gentle farmer, when promoted to an overseer, suddenly became harsh with his workers. His former humility turned into cruelty as he reveled in his newfound power. A kind friend, upon receiving a small amount of wealth, began to boast about his riches, distancing himself from his old friends. His generosity shrank, replaced by pride. A wise monk, respected by his peers, began to demand obedience instead of inspiring devotion. His words of wisdom became commands, and his leadership turned authoritarian. The young monk could now see clearly. Power revealed not the character a person pretended to have, but the character that was hidden beneath. The true measure of kindness was not how one treated those who could offer them something, but how they treated those who had nothing to give. The young monk recalled the merchant in the village, the man who seemed generous with his money but showed no kindness to his workers. "I understand now," he whispered to himself, his heart sinking with this newfound wisdom. Conflict, where masks fall away, anger reveals the truth that politeness conceals. The master's voice grew softer, but the lesson carried an even greater weight. The young monk had watched people in the marketplace, and he had seen them wear masks of politeness, of civility. But these masks were easily torn away when people were pushed to their limits. It was easy to be kind when everything was going well, but what about when things went wrong? What happened when someone was challenged, criticized, or faced with adversity? That, the master explained, was when a person's true nature would be revealed. A person who speaks softly in peace but erupts in rage at the slightest offense had never truly been gentle. A woman who smiled at everyone she met would lash out in jealousy when overlooked. Her sweetness was an act, a protective shield that crumbled when she felt threatened. A man who praised his friends in moments of success became bitter and resentful when they failed. His loyalty was conditional, dependent on his own pride and insecurity. A friend who offered encouragement in times of joy revealed their true feelings in moments of discomfort. Beneath the surface, their support was fleeting, and their true nature was a reflection of their envy and pride. The young monk thought deeply about the two men at the tea shop, the one who had spoken with such kindness, only to turn angry and bitter when challenged. It was in moments of conflict that a person's true heart was shown. Reactions, the master had taught, were raw, unfiltered. They were not rehearsed like words, and they came straight from the soul. So true nature is seen not in words, the young monk murmured to himself, but in how one responds under pressure. How they treat those who cannot benefit them. The way someone treats the powerless, the forgotten, and the unnoticed reveals their true nature. The final test was perhaps the most revealing of all. The master explained that real kindness was shown in the way someone treated those who had nothing to offer them. It was easy to be kind to people who could help you, who could offer you something in return. But how did a person treat the helpless, the invisible, the poor, and the voiceless? The master pointed to a few examples to make his point. A boss who was polite to his superiors but treated his servants with disdain and cruelty had no nobility in his heart. His kindness was selective, offered only to those who could elevate his status. A man who praised the wealthy but ignored the poor had never truly understood compassion. His charity was reserved for those who could reciprocate, not for those who were in need. A person who acted respectfully only in front of an audience, but ignored the homeless or the elderly, was not sincere. Their kindness was a performance, meant to gain approval, not to serve others. But real kindness, the master explained, was found in the way a person treated those who had nothing to give in return. It was found in the way a child was listened to with respect, how an elderly person was treated with dignity, and how a stranger was welcomed with warmth. The young monk thought back to the boy in the village who had shared his bread with the stray dog. The boy had no riches, no fame, no status to gain from his kindness. He gave simply because it was in his nature to do so. The young monk felt a deep sense of clarity. True goodness was not in grand gestures, but in small, unseen acts of love. It is not what a person does when others are watching that reveals their heart, the master said, as though reading his thoughts. It is what they do when they believe no one is looking. The young monk's heart swelled with understanding. The truth was not always obvious. It was hidden beneath the surface, revealed only in moments of power, conflict, and anonymity. True character, he realized, was not about what one claimed to be, but about what one consistently did over time. The young monk bowed deeply to his master, gratitude filling his heart. "I now see," he said softly, "how to truly know a person's heart. It is in their reactions to power, in their behavior during conflict, and in their kindness toward those who cannot help them." The master nodded, his eyes gleaming with approval. "You are beginning to understand, young one. To see the truth in others is to first see the truth in yourself." The lesson had been hard, yet enlightening. The young monk left the courtyard that night with a newfound clarity, aware that the world was filled with masks, but that true character always revealed itself in time. Judging without hatred, the young monk stood quietly, his mind swirling with all that he had learned. The teachings of his master had opened his eyes to the hidden nature of people, the masks they wore, the power they wielded, and the way they treated others. But now, a new question arose within him, one that lingered like an unspoken thought. "Master," he asked, his voice soft but filled with uncertainty, "what should we do when we see someone's true nature and it is not what we hoped? What if they are deceitful or arrogant or cruel?" The master looked at him with compassion, his old eyes reflecting a deep, ancient understanding. He smiled gently, as though this question was not new but one that every seeker of truth must ask. He knew that the young monk had come to an important realization, the realization that the world was full of masks, and beneath those masks, the truth could often be unsettling. "Do not judge with hatred," the master said, his voice calm and steady. "Judge with clarity. See things as they are, and act with wisdom." These words lingered in the air, like a delicate truth that needed to be felt, not just understood. The young monk felt the weight of them, as though they carried a deep, transformative power. The master continued, guiding his disciple further into the heart of the lesson. "When you see deceit," the master said, "do not meet it with anger, meet it with understanding." The young monk pondered this deeply. Anger, he realized, was a reaction born out of fear, fear of being deceived, fear of being taken advantage of. But to respond to deceit with anger was to feed into the same negative energy. Understanding, however, was a path of peace. By looking at deceit with the clarity of mind, one could see it for what it truly was, an illusion, a defense mechanism, a sign of insecurity. The deceiver, the master taught, was trapped in their own web of falsehoods. Anger would only entangle the monk in that same web, but understanding would allow him to rise above it. "When you see arrogance," the master continued, "do not seek revenge, simply step away." Arrogance, the young monk now understood, was a mask worn by those who sought validation, who needed to feel superior to others in order to feel secure. Arrogance was not strength, it was weakness disguised as power. To confront it with revenge or hatred would only magnify its ugliness. But to step away, to remove oneself from the presence of arrogance, was to maintain one's own peace, unaffected by the false grandeur of another. It was a quiet, powerful act of wisdom. "When you see true goodness," the master said, "honor it, nurture it, and help it grow." True goodness, the master explained, was rare and beautiful. It shone through not in grand gestures or public displays, but in simple, quiet acts of kindness and compassion. When the young monk encountered true goodness, he was to recognize it as a rare gift, something that needed to be honored, nurtured, and encouraged. True goodness was like a seed, and when it was nurtured, it could grow into something that changed the world. But if ignored or overlooked, it could wither away. By seeing the goodness in others, the young monk could help that goodness flourish, not just for the benefit of others, but for his own spiritual growth as well. The path to true understanding from that day on, the young monk no longer relied solely on words or outward appearances to judge the people around him. He had learned to see deeper, to listen with a calm heart, and to let time reveal the true nature of others. No longer would he be swayed by first impressions or surface-level interactions. He understood that to truly know someone, one must observe them in different circumstances, when they were in positions of power, when they were in conflict, and when they had nothing to gain from their actions. Observe people when they have power. Do they use it to help, or do they use it to dominate? Power, the master had taught him, was the ultimate test of character. It revealed what lay beneath the surface. A person who was humble in weakness might become arrogant in strength, and a person who was kind when powerless might become cruel when given authority. Power was a reflection of one's true nature, not just a tool to wield over others. The young monk knew that when someone was in a position of power, their actions would reveal whether their heart was pure or tainted. Watch them in moments of anger. Does their mask slip, or do they remain composed? Anger, like power, revealed the truth about a person's character. In times of frustration or provocation, a person's true nature could emerge. The young monk had seen this firsthand in the two men at the tea house. One had shown kindness, but in a moment of anger, his true face was revealed, harsh, bitter, and filled with pride. The other, though insulted, remained calm, and in that moment, the monk saw the depth of his true character. When the pressure of conflict arose, the one who remained composed, who did not lash out in rage, revealed a heart that was strong and at peace. See how they treat those who cannot help them. Is their kindness real, or is it just a performance? The young monk had witnessed this in the boy who shared his bread with the stray dog. True goodness, offered without expectation or gain. The master had taught him that the real measure of a person's kindness was not in how they treated those who could benefit them, but how they treated those who could offer nothing in return. The monk had seen many people be kind to those who could help them, but it was rare to see someone be kind to those who could not. True freedom in understanding. The young monk now understood that to judge without hatred was to walk the path of wisdom. It was not about being indifferent or passive. It was about seeing the world clearly, without the distortions of anger or resentment. To judge with clarity meant to look beyond the surface, to see people for who they truly were, and to respond not with hatred or vengeance, but with wisdom and compassion. In the end, the master's teachings had led the young monk to a powerful realization. The one who truly sees is the one who is truly free. To see clearly, without the cloud of hatred, was the key to liberation. By seeing others for who they truly were, without judgment, without attachment, and without anger, the young monk had found his own peace. And in that peace, he was free. From that day forward, he no longer judged people based on their words or their masks. He observed their actions, their reactions, and their treatment of others. And in doing so, he learned to see the truth, not only in others, but in himself.